fascism is a reactionary, ultranationalist, authoritarian movement characterized by appeal to a mythical past, malicious delegitimization of institutions, and pursuit/use of power to suppress and vilify outgroups. It arises as a response to perceived upheaval of sociocultural norms, national embarrassment, and/or elitism in society. This is a diagnostic definition of what we can call the fascist minimum, the true core of a concept that typically appears in many different forms. But to be even more clear, I'll be making 3 affirmative claims today. 1, that Trump is an authoritarian whose political project seeks to centralize and consolidate power by engaging with our laws in bad faith. 2, that he uses his position of power to vilify, intimidate, and oppress his opposition or those he designates as members of an outgroup. And 3, that he builds, fuels, and justifies this movement with allusions to a once glorious, now desecrated past, which can only be reattained through ultranationalism. I'm eager for Andrew to challenge these 3 claims and invite him to do so. But I am also curious about what his position is. Does he believe Trump is not a fascist, or is he just unsure? Because if it's the latter, I'm happy to convince him of my position. But if it's the former, I also have a lot of questions for him. Namely, that even if his definition is more narrow than mine, how could he not at least classify Trump as an authoritarian with fascistic tendencies? The man who says, quote, "I alone can fix it," who called for the termination of the U.S. Constitution and said, quote, "He who saves his country violates no law." The man who calls his opposition vermin and in speeches to our military calls them the enemy from within, while saying that undocumented immigrants poison the blood of our country. Of course, he cloaks this darkness in the veil of ultranationalism, making America great again, saying the forgotten man and woman will be forgotten no longer, and that, quote, "the bedrock of our politics will be a total allegiance to the United States of America, and through our loyalty to our country, we will rediscover our loyalty to each other." Maybe Andrew will tell us not to believe our lying ears and eyes, or that Trump just says a lot of shit. Maybe he'll reference Article 2 to excuse virtually anything done with presidential powers, or downplay all the cases of lies, rights violations, and noncompliance as good faith mistakes or novel legal theories. But after watching a man get executed and hearing the federal government lie to our face about it, I'm frankly sick of hearing excuses and false equivalencies. I'm sick of being told to call stage 3 cancer a benign tumor just because the illness isn't terminal yet. So I hope this debate can serve as a detailed exploration of Trump's politics and an interrogation of both my 3 central claims and Andrew's claims to the contrary. I want to close with a quote from someone who seems to agree with my position here, Donald Trump, who said just months ago, "I did get elected for crime, but I didn't get elected for what we're doing. This is many, many steps above. I want to thank Stephen Miller. I'd love to have him come up and explain his true feelings, maybe not his truest feelings. That might be going a little bit too far."
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that opening, Adam. We're going to kick it over to Andrew for his opening as well. But first, quick housekeeping. Folks, if you didn't know, DebateCon 7 in Houston, Texas. It's less than a week away. It's Saturday, January 31st. Grab your tickets now. They're linked in the description box. It's going to be huge. We're expecting it to sell out. With that, we're going to kick it over to Andrew for his opening as well. Andrew, thanks for being with us. The floor is all yours.
Damn it, Con. You were the one. Thought you were going to, I was hoping going to be a whole different thing, but it's just the normal TDS shit. So it's fine. This is exactly what the debate I prepared for, unfortunately, but I had hope. I had hope, Con. As we engage in this debate on if Trump is or is not a fascist, there are a few things I want to point out in the outset of the debate, a few tactics which are going to be going on. If I were my debate opponent, I would fallaciously argue that Trump isn't, quote, a full-blown fascist, but he's just mostly a fascist. And I'm very certain this is where he's going to go with this. So I wanted to, in the outset, prepare a demonstration for why this sort of arguing makes no sense and should ultimately be rejected. By the way, it's exactly what he did. I will do this by talking about chimpanzees and bananas. You see, a chimpanzee, by some accounts, shares 98% of the same DNA as a human being. Does that make a chimp 98% human? Do they seem 98% human to you, or do they seem like something else entirely? Here, I want to demonstrate this principle. This is a banana. It shares 60% of genes with human beings. Does it seem like it's 60% a human being, though? No, it doesn't. If I peel it, like I just did, and I eat it, am I engaging in 60% cannibalism? Well, I'm not. Of course not. It's ridiculous on its face. But it's likely my opponent's going to try to tell you that Trump shares X amount of traits with fascists, exactly what he did. So he's mostly a fascist. He's mostly a fascist, which is mind-boggling to me, but the standard fare argument of the idiot left. This needs to be rejected immediately for the obvious reason, which is ideologies have overlap but differ greatly in what they actually are and why they are or are not the thing. My opponent defines fascism, and I quote, "Fascism is a reactionary, ultranationalist, authoritarian movement characterized by appeal to a mythical past, malicious delegitimizing of institutions in pursuit of power to suppress outgroups and vilify outgroups, rises as a response to perceived upheaval of sociocultural norms, national embarrassment, or elitism in society." He bases this definition largely, he says, on fascist scholars like Robert Paxton, Jason Stanley. I think that they would reject his definition, honestly, because they don't consider Trump to be a fascist. They don't consider him to be a fascist, which is hilarious. Okay? Even Paxton, post J6, right, when he said that he's fine with the label now, still doesn't consider Trump to actually be a fascist. Under his criteria of fascism, which I'll grant for the sake of argument, Sanders would be a fascist. Bernie Sanders, the guy this guy likes. If we took out ultra-nationalists, he would fit every criteria Con listed. Sanders has an authoritarian movement. He wants to nationalize many industries away from the private sector. He would need state power to do so in a way which would obviously be oppressive to private interested parties and people. He appeals to and speaks positively of communist nation, appeals to their past policies and glories. He delegitimizes institutions maliciously like healthcare, police forces, ICE, all sorts of things. He wants to use state power to vilify the outgroup, millionaires and billionaires, and he wants power to do so. Now, is Sanders a fascist? Of course not. This is an example of how nebulous this broad definition can be used because it's just silly. Would this make him 60% fascist? Oh, ridiculous, because the core pillar isn't there anymore. It's not there anymore for Sanders than it is for Trump. And that's this one pillar, ultranationalism. While I have a very different definition from Mr. Khan, I had to use this, on what fascism actually is, and the pillars which hold it up, I would like to point out by his metric, Trump isn't a fascist and can't be because he isn't an ultranationalist. And without that, the whole pillar and house of cards falls down. Nationalism is a belief your country should come first before other nations. Ultranationalism is the belief your nation comes before everything else. God, family, morals, job, interest. The state becomes the core of the ideology, and it is an ideology, not just a core of traits. Trump is barely even a nationalist, let alone an ultranationalist. MAGA, his base of supporters, isn't asked or required to put Trump before God or family or other value systems they may hold. Not to mention, he has some pretty anti-nationalist policies like gold cards to buy citizenship for foreign nationals, or 600,000 imported Chinese students, or hundreds of thousands of Indians brought in for cheap labor, or any number of different anti-nationalist policies that I can point at. Tons of policies which Trump puts forward, and I could argue if they're barely nationalistic at all, but certainly he isn't an ultra-nationalist, and without that pillar, he can't be a fascist. Now, I'm making a positive case here, to be fair, and so is my opponent. I'm saying Trump is not a fascist. He's saying he is. So I want to be charitable there. This is not I get to stay on the fence and just pepper him about his definition. He gets to interrogate me as well. That's fair, right? I'm happy on demand to provide my definition for fascism, its cores, philosophy of the third position, if you would like. I spent a lot of time in my debate career arguing against the tenets of the third position, i.e. fascism. What it is, its philosophy, its originators like Giovanni Gentili, Mussolini, others, the ideas of corporatism and the fasci, what that represents and why it represents that. What's happening here in actuality is this. The left and progressives like my opponent, in general, they want to use morally infused language to demonize their opposition by comparing them to Nazis and fascists, which they think are synonyms. They want all of the horrors of fascism to be laid at the feet of their political opposition, even if the political opposition doesn't share the ideology. And if they don't share the ideology, they just come up with new ways to define the ideology so they can make them share it. It's not that Trump is a fascist, you see. It's that the Holocaust happened and Mustache Man has the same ideology as Trump. So he's like them. And his allies in Italy and the fascists did the same thing too. This is what gives them the perceived moral high ground in which to resist the evil fascists. And that's all this has ever been. Purely performative, all lies, which is going to totally fall apart when I put this to the question. Watch. And with that, I'm happy to get into this. Now, I have each definition for semantic certainty that you could ever want. You want ultranationalism. You want definitions for anything in my position. I've got them on hand. We're ready to go. I hope you got the same thing so that we can skip the semantics and get right to the meat of it, right? But yeah, I'm with that. I'm ready to get right into this.
You got it. With that, we'll jump into the open dialogue. First, folks, if you didn't know, if you can't make it to DebateCon 7 this Saturday in Houston, Texas, you can watch it live from home. It's a perk for our Final Word channel membership tier. Check out those memberships right now by clicking the join button. And also, if you haven't yet, hit the like button, whether you're watching here or elsewhere. We're going to kick it into the open dialogue. And gentlemen, do I understand you guys are cool with debating each of your definitions in terms of does Trump fit the definition?
Well, each of our positions. My position would be that Trump is not a fascist. My opponent is saying that he is a fascist. And so we'll be debating from both of those angles. I don't care if the front half of the debate is loaded against me or against you. It doesn't really matter. I think it's fair to pepper me about what I think fascism is, just like I'm about to pepper you with what you think fascism is.
Sure.
Okay.
Either of you have a preference on whose definition we use first?
Well, let's go with Khan's. He's the one who's making the positive claim
Cool.
that he is the thing, and then we can get into mine. Or we can, even as we go, you can ask me if you'd like. That's fine.
I am
So-
curious, Andrew. Can you just quickly share your broad-based definition of fascism that you'd use as like a shorthand?
Yeah. So fascism is an ideology that proposes corporatist, paleogenetic, and ultranationalist state. That's what fascism is.
Okay. I just want to start off by addressing a few of the things you said in your opening statement. So
Yeah, no,
the
hang on,
analogy-
real
yeah.
quick, because I want to get some semantics out of the way, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Just to make sure
Yeah.
that we got this
I
right.
guess.
Ultranationalism is defined by you as what?
I would say that ultranationalism frames greatness of nations as a zero-sum game where a nation's glory is derived from dominating other countries.
I have a quote here from those original fascists. I want to see if you will agree to this. Ultranationalists, from their view, all within the state, nothing outside the state, nothing against the state.
Is this an ideological thing or a
Yeah,
descriptive
of course,
thing?
it's ideological from their
My
view.
definition of fascism isn't even ideological, so I would reject that off.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. How's it not ideological? It
Like
is.
I
It
said,
is
it's a
ideological.
socio-political phenomenon. That is how Robert Paxton and Jason Stanley describe it. And just to quickly clarify,
It's not just how they describe it.
Hold on. They both call Trump a fascist.
Oh,
Robert
no.
Paxton says he doesn't use the word fascist because he finds it's basically colloquially lost all meaning. But after January 6th, Robert Paxton did say that Trump now meets the characteristics of fascism.
Nope.
And Jason Stanley has been saying the same for
No,
years.
well, first of all, Stanley's a political hack. Paxton is serious.
Of course you're going to say that.
No, so hang on. Paxton is serious. He's not a political hack. Like that guy is an actual, like he has studied fascism. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Stanley, yeah, he's a political hack. He's a leftist. Come on, man. Paxton, though, he's more politically neutral. But you're basically operating off Paxton anyway, not really Stanley, at least by the definition that you're giving. Paxton himself did not actually say this. You're making this up. Here's what actually happened. Paxton has been saying for years that Trump does not fall under the criteria of being a fascist. Post J6, he said he was fine with him being labeled that. He was very careful with his words, though. He didn't actually say there's anything new here which makes Trump fall under this label. Only that he was fine now with the label because it had some utility use.
Did you not read his Newsweek article?
I did. Well, not his Newsweek. It wasn't Newsweek.
He wrote a piece in Newsweek after January 6th where he said, I'm now calling Trump a fascist.
Well, hang on. Let me pull the article up here.
Sure.
1 second. We'll make sure that we have it correct. But yeah, that was my interpretation from it because of the very first line. Read the very first 2 lines. It's all vibes and feelings, bro. Just read it. Read it out
First
loud.
2 lines of what?
Read the first 2 lines of the article that you're referencing.
Sure, let me pull it up.
Yep, pull it up.
I'm curious why I pulled that up. Where are you deriving that he didn't call Trump a fascist?
Well, he was very cautious with his language in this article.
So it's literally titled. Hold on, let me make sure. By
Doesn't
Robert
matter what it's
Paxton.
titled. It matters what it
I've
said.
hesitated to call Donald Trump a fascist until now.
Yeah,
I
that's what they
resisted for
are.
a long time applying the fascist label to Donald J. Trump. He did indeed display some telltale signs in 2016. I mean, you want me to read the whole thing? Or
No.
He goes on
But
to
just
say
right
he's now.
right in the first line, right?
Uh-huh.
I've hesitated to label Donald Trump a fascist,
Uh-huh.
even though he had telltale signs, right?
Past tense.
Yeah. What was the new
Hesitated past tense,
what's the
right?
new criteria according to your definition that Trump fell under after J6? What is it?
I believe he said the leveraging of political violence. I can find specifically.
Yeah. What
in the
about you
article.
though? You have a specific definition here.
Mhm.
Did you agree with Paxton that before J6 Trump wasn't a fascist?
I would think that Trump was probably in stages 2 or 3 of fascism prior to January 6th, and I think after that we started arriving between stages 3
So
and 4.
he was at at a certain percentage. He was.
It's not
We're back to
percentages,
the
it's
argument
stages.
from banana.
It's a cute analogy, but the biology of a fruit is not analogous to a political
Donald Trump
movement.
hasn't met any of the stages of fascism. What stages? According to the historic definition of fascism, what stages are you talking about? Fascism,
the ones that I read in my opening
yeah,
statement.
fascism was a response to socialism. That's what it's a response to. It's a third
No,
position. It's a third position.
You're describing one iteration of fascism.
No, that's the only iteration of it. Show me where else is.
according to you.
Name
but
another
this isn't even
fascist
settled,
nation besides
This isn't even
Mussolini's
settled
Italy.
in academic circles.
Well, then I don't want to hear you say it is. And
I'm not. I'm
great.
giving you my definition,
And
which
I'm
I
telling
think
you
is
your
based on
definition.
scholars who are better.
Your definition is,
and you're being pedantic. About
I'm
it.
using the core arguments from the architects who made fascism.
And
You're-
I
what
just
you're
told
doing
you
is saying,
why
here's-
Robert Paxton said that's dumb.
Here's
to
what
do.
you're doing. You're saying I'm using the interpretation of other people for the source material. I'm saying I read the fucking source material.
You clearly didn't, though.
I clearly did. What do you want to know about
You
actual
literally claimed that Robert
originating
Paxton
fascism?
does not think Donald Trump's a fascist.
Doesn't. There's no new criteria added.
Literally, it's not about new criteria. It's about Trump's behavior changing such that
He
now
said that
falls
he's
under
now
a definition.
fine with the label. That's it.
And I can also, if you're talking about, okay, this is just what do you call him? Giovanni Gentile is the guy who describes what fascism is, and you think Robert Paxton is valid here. He himself has said the words of fascist intellectuals, even if we accept.
Hang on, you're conflating a couple things.
Okay.
I agree that Paxton is a popular scholar for fascism, namely because he basically is trying to give you guys a name the trait argument, and leftists love him. Not that I cede that his authority on fascism.
You have to poison the well with that.
Not that I cede that his authority on fascism is correct, because it has nothing to do ultimately with third positionism. And I completely reject it based on the definition that I gave for fascism, which is 3 core pillars. And you need to have all 3 of them there. Starting with yours, though, your definition. How's Trump an ultra-nationalist?
I actually have it written down right here. So he, hold on, there we go. He builds, fuels, and justifies his movement with allusions to a once glorious, now desecrated past, which
It's not
can only be
ultranationalism.
reattained. Can I finish? And you'd hear the word ultranationalist in there. He builds, fuels, and justifies his movement with allusions to a once glorious, now desecrated past, which can only be reattained through ultranationalism. He talks about the return of a golden age of the nation and an era of decline that went after
You're
it.
talking about what's called paleogenetics here.
That's
talking
from
about
a different
paleogenetic.
scholar, Roger something.
Yeah, you're
That's a
talking, but
different
that's what
scholar.
it is. It's paleogenetic. So the thing is,
I
it's
didn't
like,
use the word paleogenetic.
you don't
I mean,
need
there's
to, but
overlap
that's what it's
between definitions
describing.
here.
What you're describing there is not ultranationalism.
I just want to be clear. There's plenty of overlap between different
What
definitions
does that
here,
have
right?
to do with ultranationalism, dude? Nothing you just said has anything to do with ultranationalism.
I already answered your question
hang on, stop,
earlier.
Bro, stop. Let me finish. It's
Okay, then
tautological.
don't ask a question. Don't let me answer.
It's tautological. Okay, what you're doing is you're saying
Mm-hmm.
the way that Trump is ultra nationalistic is because he says things that can only be achieved through ultranationalism. That's not telling me how he's.
I think you're misunderstanding
he
my
is
claim.
Well, then tell me how he's an ultranationalist.
So ultranationalism is sort of an aesthetic or a communication strategy in this case, where his governance frames American greatness as a zero-sum game.
That's not
For
what-
America
nope.
to be great, it must maximally use its power in a might makes right framework.
That's just nationalism.
How would you distinguish? When does it
I
become
already
ultra?
told you, but I'll tell you again.
When does it become
right?
ultra? Where's the line for
I'll
you?
tell you exactly where the line comes in. When
Yeah.
it becomes that all loyalty is to the state, that's ultranationalism. When everything goes all within the state, nothing outside the state, nothing against the state, The whole point of fascism was to utilize ultranationalism, loyalty to the state, to introduce corporatism. It couldn't work without ultranationalism.
So do you think
Hang
ultranationalism?
Hang on.
Okay.
Because ultranationalism itself, right, is not corporatism is not even possible absent that. So threshold breaker is not. So let me ask you the same question in reverse. When does ultranationalism become just regular nationalism?
I mean, it's obviously a blurry line. There's not going to be one moment where like, oh, now all of a sudden it's no. We can talk about specific examples that would illustrate where the line is. I don't know if you want me to give you a one-sentence summary of a topic that scholars have been debating for decades.
Well, hang on. You can't say to me, Andrew, where's the threshold breaker? And I give it to you. And I ask you the same question reverse. Where's your threshold breaker?
No, because you're the one who took issue with the threshold. I didn't say anything about thresholds. You're the one who took issue with it.
You did. You said you asked specifically this question. When does nationalism become ultranationalism? I gave you the exact criteria.
Why did I ask that question?
I gave you because you haven't told me what ultranationalism is.
No, because you said Trump. That's nationalism, not ultranationalism.
Yeah, that's nationalism. Correct. So what's the difference? Well, how is it? What's the difference in between nationalism and ultranationalism?
Maybe we're talking about different things here. Do you think ultranationalism cannot be a rhetorical strategy? It's just an ideology?
Yes.
So it can't be a rhetorical strategy.
Well, I mean, you can allude anything could be a rhetorical strategy.
Okay, so when I'm talking about fascism, I'm talking about number one, how it behaves, and number two, how it presents itself.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it is the thing.
And that is where ultranationalism comes into it. Just like the mythic past he describes, I don't believe there was actually a mythic past, Andrew.
So what's ultranationalism? What is it? What is it?
I already told you. It frames American greatness as a zero-sum game. For America to be great, it must maximally use its power in a might makes right framework.
And what's the difference between that and nationalism?
It's not a zero-sum game necessarily.
So what's the difference? Is there a difference or not?
Zero-sum game?
Is there a difference or not?
Yes, I think ultranationalism takes nationalists into zero-sum territory, which changes how it's going to behave on a world stage and starts overlapping with imperialism as well.
No, ultranationalism from a fascistic point of view.
From your fascistic point of view.
No, from Giovanni Gentile, the orchestrator of fascism, the inventor of it.
This is like asking a cult member how cults work and using his ideology to define like the science of cults. Like it just doesn't make sense to take one iteration of fascism in Italy and say this is how we define all fascism now. Like why can't we have a diagnostic framework?
Ultranationalism has to be distinct from nationalism somehow. When you say the things that you just said can be attributed to nationalism, here's why. And not ultranationalism. Let's look at the distinctions here. When you say you're a nationalist, you're putting your nation before other nations. That is a zero-sum game.
Not necessarily, no.
Most of the time, it's a zero-sum game. The idea here is if it's good for me, right? I'm going to do if there's two choices presented to me, this one will be good for you and me, or this one
ultranationalism says,
stop, bro. Or this one over here will be much better for me than you. Right? Then you take that one. That's usually nation first. Ultranationalism, the threshold delineator here, is that the state itself becomes a body. And that's where the allegiance and loyalty must always lie.
That's the ideology.
Is to the state. From the people's perspective. That's what actual ultranationalism is. You're talking about just nationalism, the idea of putting your nation above others. So what?
Putting your nation above others is different than saying that every instance of another nation being great is somehow subtracting from the finite amount of greatness that exists, and America must seize this greatness. If someone else is doing well, it must mean we've been ripped off as a country.
Oh,
that is one step above just nationalism.
So let me ask you this. When you say it's fundamentally un-American, which you say all the time, what does that mean?
When did I say it's fundamentally un-American?
When you say things are fundamentally un-American, this is an un-American thing.
When did I say that?
I don't remember the exact debate, but you did say that sounds un-American.
Oh, you're saying at some point in the past, okay?
Yeah, that's un-American. What does that mean? When you say it's un-American,
it depends on the context in which I said it. I'm probably alluding to like liberal democratic values.
So you're alluding to some like previous time when you think things were more American?
No, I'm alluding to values.
So ideology.
Values. I mean, ideology can be kind of like a formalization of values.
I don't.
They're not necessarily synonymous.
I think they are. I don't know how you get to values without ideology.
Okay, you can just have them as like a sort of like a, what do you call it? Like the premise of what you believe. You can just
have values. I have values. What's the framework for them?
Do you have to be ideological to have values?
Yeah, I think you do.
So people that don't have an ideological framework, they don't value anything, they have no preferences, or
Yeah, usually they're called moral anti-realist or nihilist. So yeah,
no, but they would
generally
still
don't.
descriptively have values. They have preferences. They choose to do certain things over others.
Well,
They value certain things
hang
and
on.
not others,
If they
right?
have preferences, then we're getting into ideological territory and dogmatic territory, right?
Well, an ideology is going to be like internally consistent usually and codified or
Yeah.
formalized
So if you say I
version
have
of
a
values.
preference for things I like, that's the highest value. Now we're in dogmatic
That's not really an
territory.
ideology, though.
That is really an ideology.
Okay, I don't
It
know if
is
you want to
really
disagree to disagree here.
100%
This
an
is like we're going in
ideology.
circles on
But
this. I don't
anyway,
know.
that aside, the distinction here is on ultranationalism versus nationalism.
Yeah.
The whole idea for ultranationalism within all of the framework in World War II, especially,
Yeah, I understood your
was
definition.
not just with Germany. It was right. It's 1,000-year millennia. It's going to be the Third Reich 1,000 years into the future from Benito Mussolini. This is going to be futurism, man. We're going to be Italians with cool cars and we slash each other's faces with swords and shit. We love this stuff. And we have part of this is going to last for 2,000 years. That's what it's going to be. It's an ideology which is formatted around the loyalty and body of the state being adhered to as the highest value of the citizen. That is ultranationalism.
That's
Trump
how
does
you're
not
defining
run.
it.
Trump does not run anything with, well, you can't give me a threshold breaker. You just say, I don't know.
Wait, do you think that two things can't be distinct if there isn't a very
I
like
think you're not
solid line
making
in
a
between
case.
them?
You're not making a case, though, for
No,
how these are
but
distinct.
The supposed issue you're trying to point out in my logic, I'm just trying to clarify if you'd hold that standard in other situations. Do you think if there's like a blurry delineation or a blurry distinction between two concepts, that means we ought to call them the same thing?
Not always, unless we have something which is conceptually a delineation which is provable.
Do you accept that there can be ambiguity in delineations of concepts that are
Sure.
very closely related?
Yeah, of course.
That's all I'm saying.
That's part of my argument, but it has nothing to do
Part
with
of my argument as well.
Has nothing to do with this argument. What
Has
you're
everything
asking
to do
me
with
to
this
do,
argument.
what you're asking me to do is in a vacuum tell you if there can be overlap or ambiguity between concepts or relations of ideology.
Or I guess not in a vacuum,
Hang
in
on.
real life as
I
well.
concede that is the case, right?
Uh-huh.
But in this case, I'm not conceding that. So do you agree with me that while I can concede that can be the case, that it can also be the case where there is something which is distinct that can be
Yes, and I
pointed
think
to?
that
Hang
the
on.
last place
Let
you'd
me
find that
finish
is
the
social
question. Let me
sciences.
finish the question.
Yeah.
That there is delineations which can be made between ideologies that can be easily pointed to, like Marxism, for instance. I can give you a very easy delineation between Marxism and other forms of ideology. Stateless society could be one of those, right? Things that we could agree to as being distinct, right? And what does a stateless society mean and how we get into that. In this case, you're not actually telling me where it is that how we get to the ultranationalist
Told you
thing.
multiple times.
No, you didn't. You just said there's
And
ambiguity.
I'm glad you brought up the Marxism example. So yeah, you can probably give me easy distinctions between Marxism and like capitalism, but giving me distinctions between different types of Marxism becomes a lot more blurry. So it is true, there are many situations where delineations can be pretty binary and it doesn't have to be overcomplicated. The last place where that would be true is the social sciences.
Okay,
Like,
tell
that's
me
not
that.
the biology
I just
of a
want to hear
fruit.
the distinction then. What's the distinction between ultranationalism and nationalism?
I've told you making it a zero-sum game multiple times. Like, I
Yeah,
don't know
but
how many
how
times
is
I
that
need to say
different than just regular nationalism?
Regular nationalism doesn't necessitate zero-sum frameworks.
Okay, give me an example of that.
Like regular
Of a
nationalism?
nationalistic policy that's not putting the nation first in a zero-sum category.
Well, it's putting the nation first, but not in a zero-sum way.
Okay, give me an example of
So
that.
this could be like doing protectionist policies.
How can you be
on-
putting the nation first unless that was a zero-sum? How does the nation come first if you're compromising on the nation coming first?
What are you asking?
How are you putting the nation first if you're willing to compromise on putting the nation first?
What do you mean willing to compromise on putting the
Well,
nation
if it's
first?
if it's the case, you agree with me. Nationalism is putting your nation first, right?
It's kind of a short definition, but okay.
Yes. So if
I
that's the
guess.
case, how do you put your nation first if you're willing at the same time to not put your nation first? If you're willing
This
at the
question is
same
like
time,
unrelated to what I've
no, it's
been saying.
completely related. How can you put?
How is it related?
How can you put your nation first? Because you're saying that nationalism is nation first, but it's not zero sum. I'm arguing that it has to be zero sum or it can't be nation first. That's the zero sum. The nation comes first.
Zero sum meaning that if the nation's doing well, that means that other countries have to be doing worse in proportion to how much better the
That's
nation's
not.
doing.
Well, wait a
That's
second.
what zero sum is.
Wait a second. It's also zero sum to say your nation comes first. That's a zero sum categorical statement, right?
It doesn't have to be zero sum.
Why? Then how can you?
Your
How
nation
can you always?
be first,
It's
while
just,
other
does your
nations
nation
are also
always?
doing very
But
well.
does your nation always come first?
Hold on, you understand that like even people that believe in like multilateralism and like
Yeah, sure.
cooperation internationally, they can also want
Does
to
your
put their nation
nation
first.
always come first?
What are you even talking about?
In nationalism, are you always putting your nation first?
Yeah, broadly speaking,
Are you
yes.
uncompromising in putting your nation always first?
It depends on what we're talking about in the specific iteration of it, because you're defining it
Well,
as
then
an
you're not.
ideology.
Then it's P
No,
and not
because
P. It's a
the issue here-
philosophical contradiction.
The issue is you're trying to debate me on the ideology of ultranationalism, and then I'm defending the rhetorical strategy of ultranationalism.
I don't know. This is not a great pivot for you.
No, it's what I've been saying since the beginning of the debate,
Yeah,
Andrew.
but it's incoherent. This is incoherent. It's P and not
You're
P.
making it incoherent by going in circles and
It's
asking the same
P
question
and not
over
P.
and over.
Well, because what you just said is incoherent. If it's P and not P. So the idea here is, Andrew, nationalism means you always put the nation first. Always, right?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah, but then the question is, what does putting the nation first mean?
Okay, hang on. If you're always putting the nation first, then it's already zero sum because it's an always statement.
Wait,
It's
what do you think zero sum
always.
means?
Means no compromise, no negotiation, no nothing, right?
No,
Isn't
no,
that sum?
zero sum means there's like a finite amount in the pie, and that if someone's getting more of the pie, that necessarily means that someone else cannot get more of it, right? So if
wait a
America's
second.
doing better, yeah.
Hang on. Let's back up.
Uh-huh.
You think that zero? Let's just make sure that we got this right. A zero sum game.
Mm-hmm.
What are we referencing there?
I'm referencing a situation where one person doing better necessarily means that someone else has to do worse.
Okay, and so the nation, the United States, always, to put it first, needs to be the one that's always doing best, right? Because we're
Yeah,
putting
but
it
that
first.
doesn't
Okay,
mean
then
zero
it's zero sum. You're
No,
making
it's
an
not.
always statement that we
Hold on.
always, even at the expense of other nations,
So
must
you're
be doing
saying
best.
it's not possible for the nation to be put first and for other countries to also be doing very well, but just not in first place?
Here's the problem with this, right? I can concede
Okay.
this point, but you still have to concede mine.
What's your point?
So the thing is like, sure, you can say that the United States can do well, and you can also do well. But when we're talking about the uncompromising positions, that the United States is always going to be first in this, right? That's uncompromising,
in rhetoric.
no matter what, not just in rhetoric, in action.
And how I'm using it, it's uncompromising in rhetoric.
Oh,
and again,
okay. Now you're going to pivot
United
again?
States,
So not in action?
people can rewind the debate.
Oh,
I've been
God.
saying that it's a rhetorical
So
strategy since you
ridiculous.
asked me first about ultranationalism. So if people think that's a pivot, they can just rewind like a few minutes back. Andrew, it's pretty simple here.
So
Someone
fascism
can
is
be. Hold on.
rhetorical.
Let me just quickly address that. It's a mix of rhetorical strategies and behaviors. I don't know how many times I have to repeat that. But again, ultranationalism, I'm referring to here as a rhetorical strategy that is used as the justification for the authoritarianism and the vilification.
Yeah, but
It's
that
the
doesn't
fuel
get
for
us
the machine.
Yeah, but that doesn't get us any close to what ultranationalism actually is.
It doesn't get you any closer to it.
It
but
doesn't
I
get
think-
anybody any closer because it's tautological. It's just like ultranationalism is the very thing that we're appealing to justify this other thing, and that's what ultranationalism is. It's like that's a tautology. The
No, I
thing
explained what ultranationalism
No,
is.
you
and
really
explained
didn't.
its
You said it's a
functional utility
zero-sum-
in fascist
you said it's a
movements
zero-sum game.
when it comes to nationalism. Yes,
Okay,
it's an
so
extreme
are you
form of
saying-
nationalism.
Are you saying that ultranationalists then can't make compromises with other nations?
Substantively, they could, but they'll never admit it rhetorically.
Okay, wait a second. So
As I've been saying.
Benito Mussolini, the fascist, would never admit that they compromised with any other nation.
I mean, if it was an allied nation, he might, because it's going to be
Well, then
actually
what are you-
bolstering his
what are
own.
you talking about?
If the compromise is not at the detriment of his own nationalist sentiment, then what would be the issue with that?
Well, because in this case, I can actually give you examples of where fascists compromised with other nations, which would have been them making a compromise, even though they were ultranational.
How long do you want to stay on the ultranationalism thing?
Well, I think that it's the core of your pillar.
I gave you my 3 affirmative claims and invited you to
Yeah, I know,
challenge
but
each
you also
one.
gave me a definition, didn't you?
Right, and then I condensed that definition into 3 affirmative claims
Yeah,
for the
but-
purposes of this debate.
But I'm saying that well, hang on. The 3 affirmative claims don't have anything to do with fascism. They have to do with authoritarianism.
Nope.
Okay, let's start with claim 1.
Sure. Do you want me to read all 3, or do you want to just
Read all
number 1
3.
right now? Okay. The first claim is Trump is an authoritarian whose political project seeks to centralize and consolidate power by engaging with our laws in bad faith.
Sure, I concede the point.
2, he uses his position of power to vilify, intimidate, and oppress his opposition and those he designates as member of outgroups.
I cede the point.
3, he builds, fuels, and justifies this movement with allusions to a once glorious, now desecrated past, which can only be reattained through ultranationalism.
See that point too?
Cool. Thanks for having us, James.
That's not me ceding to fascism.
Well, you're ceding that, by my definition, Trump is a fascist.
No, because your definition has a key word here, which is not in any of those 3 pillars. Ultra nationalist.
I just said that was at the end of the 3rd pillar.
Here's the problem with it. No, you said he appeals. You're saying he appeals to some like rhetorical ultranationalism or something. That's not ultranationalism.
To you, it's not.
No, it's just not.
Okay, cool.
It's just objectively not ultranationalism. Even if I concede all 3 of these points, it doesn't demonstrate Trump's a fascist.
Why not?
Because the metrics for ultranationalism are not in place. None of them.
Because you're using a different definition of ultranationalism.
No, because I'm using the definition of ultranationalism.
So is there like a consensus on what ultranationalism means?
Yes, there's a consensus of ultranationalism versus nationalism. That's
Who's
one
the
thing.
Consensus between?
Well, in this case, we're looking at the architects of fascism, what they considered it to be, which
and
is
I
Giovanni Gentile.
Why appealing to the architects of this ideology, who are always going to dress up their methods with ideological flourish, is not really relevant in the descriptive analysis of whether or not someone is a fascist.
It's the most relevant is whether or not they follow the actual ideology. What you're trying to do is name the trait, some vegan or name the trait argument for fascists. And it's like, no,
veganism came from. You're the one who brought up bananas earlier.
Fascism is but that wasn't to demonstrate anything vegan related. So anyway, the point is here is that fascists themselves told us what they considered ultranationalism to be. Within the state,
and cult members tell us what their cult is all about.
Their ideology?
Yeah, of the cult, but then they're going to conveniently ignore that ideology for purposes of achieving power.
So you're saying that you're going to tell Christians what they believe more than Christians are going to tell you what they believe?
I'm not here to talk about religion, so no, I'm not telling Christians anything.
Well, do you consider Christianity an ideology?
It's a religion. I mean, I guess it's an ideology, sure.
Yeah, so the thing is like, why would you yield to them on their ideology then and what they believe?
Because religions, especially organized religions, are by definition going to be formalized doctrines that you have to adhere to.
With dogmas, right?
Yeah, sure.
Don't you consider Giovanni?
And we're talking about socio-political phenomena.
Don't you consider these social political advocates of this particular ideology to have written dogma pertaining to the very ideology that they then instituted in their nation? In Gentile's case and Fascist Italy's case, they brought on 22 sectors of new corporatism. Yeah. They had dogma that they actually acted on. It wasn't in a vacuum. They acted on the dogma.
Let me ask you a question about
the dogma.
Would they deviate from that ideological dogma if it meant expanding or consolidating their power, or would they say, no, I have to stick to the dogma, like the fascist leaders in those situations?
Well, I think in Italy, they would not have deviated. In Franco's Spain, they may have deviated.
Sure. All I'm trying to get at here is that what a fascist says fascism is probably going to be dressed up in a certain way that is going to obfuscate or straight up omit certain aspects of how fascism actually functions.
Yeah, so and
again, I'm using a diagnostic definition.
Why shouldn't I do the exact same thing? I'm giving you you
can do whatever you want.
Not only a diagnostic definition, I'm giving you the most concise historical definition. It's a historical movement. It's not just
a very
capturing,
narrow definition.
It's not just capture. I gave you such a narrow definition. It's unbelievable. I'll give it to you again. Right?
No, I know
Fascism is an ideology that proposes a corporatist, telegenetic, ultranationalist state. That's as narrow as it could possibly be.
I know.
Do you want each of these to? I can expand on each of these.
I know your definition. You talked about like the merging of the head and the body and the state and whatever. Like I know how you define it. I just don't like that definition.
Oh, that's nice. I'm glad you don't like it. We could just
and
ignore.
You don't like mine.
We could just ignore all his. We'll just ignore
49 minutes.
Yeah, we'll just ignore all historic context for the thing you call the guy.
Just like you ignore all the scholars you don't like by calling them leftist hacks.
Wait. The main one here, Paxton, right? I gave the olive branch. I was like, look, I like this guy's work. I understand. He is actually a scholar who's actually focusing on the issue. He is giving you expounded beliefs. He does utilize some of the historic context, right?
And what's wrong with Jason Stanley?
He almost stays completely away from who cares? He stays completely away from historic. He stays completely away, though, from the historic ideas of corporatism, third positionism, and instead he's trying to use a modern lens in which to gift to you leftists or some shit. He stays completely away from all of that, which is why so many people disagree with Paxton. Third positionists,
Yes, and Paxton
by the way,
disagrees with many people.
we have modern third positionists right now who are advocating for their positions. We've got Keith Woods. We've got what was his the other one who used to be a big I can't think of his name. Cultured Thug. He ran a third positionist thing for a long time that gained a lot of steam. There's lots of third positionists actually who we can appeal to tell us what the third position is, right? And what it is that the foundational philosophy is, this and that. All what you're trying to do is use morally ambiguous language in order to call your opposition that thing. But you're not actually creating a prescriptive claim. But you're not creating
descriptive.
Yeah. Well, wait, prescriptive or descriptive?
I'm saying the claim I'm making is descriptive that Donald Trump is a fascist.
Yeah,
you could say, yeah, he is, but fascism is good.
Okay,
That's a different conversation.
Here's the thing. I'm going to make the descriptive claim that fascism is both historic. It's a historic movement, and historic movements deserve historic definitions, and they just deserve to have their historicity brought into play when it comes to you defining them in a modern sense so that you can understand what this ideology actually is, and that you are completely bereft of that in your definition or even in explaining yourself here.
I don't want you to pivot from the Jason Stanley thing. Like, why do you think that he is like
it's irrelevant and tangential?
No, it's relevant because you are the one who impugned his
credibility.
credibility.
Now he's great. I'll just say he's great.
Okay, cool.
Okay, anything else?
Cool.
So,
nope,
okay, great. So anyway, it's tangential, it's irrelevant. That was the pivot. So back to this.
Okay, that's kind of
when
slimy.
we're talking about historic, when we're talking about you're the one who made the pivot. When we're talking about historic, historic movements, they have historic definitions. Feminism does. Christianity has historic definitions. All ideology, communism has historical definitions. All of these things have historic definitions which are laid in to what they actually are. For some reason, you want us to believe we should just ignore that for fascism.
I don't want anyone to believe anything. I'm defending my position. If you think I'm wrong, I don't know what I'm supposed to do about that. If you want to be pedantic about what ultranationalism means and ignore every single point I make, that's your right to do. I am curious, when you conceded to my 3 affirmative claims, was that like a sarcastic, like, okay, liberal, whatever you said?
No,
was
I'm
like an
pointing out
concession?
that even if I cede all these claims, it wouldn't.
But do you cede them?
It wouldn't demonstrate that. Well, let's go through them one at a time.
Sure. You want me to start with number 1? Trump is an authoritarian whose political project seeks to centralize and consolidate power by engaging with our laws in bad faith.
Yeah, I'll cede that claim.
You actually fully agree with me on that?
No, I didn't say I fully agree with you. I just said I'll cede the claim. Whether I agree with you or not is tangential to the debate.
Well, I'm curious. Do you agree?
I don't care what you're curious about. It's tangential to the debate.
Well, it seems pretty
I don't
relevant
care
to the
what
debate,
you're.
actually.
No, it's not relevant. If I agree or don't agree, what's relevant is
my
if he is or
affirmative
isn't a
claim
fascist.
as to why Trump is a fascist is not relevant to the debate.
No, wait.
Okay.
That claim is relevant to the debate. Whether I agree with that claim is not.
And you don't want to share with anyone whether or not you agree with that.
Why would that have anything to do with this debate?
Because then we could discuss substantively what
no,
Trump
you
has
want
done.
to get into policies. Next time, ask for policy
I want to get
debate.
into Trump
We're
because
asking,
if you read the description
what's
of the debate, is Trump a fascist, not what is fascism.
Here's the thing. I'm ceding every one of these points, hypothetically, and still demonstrating he's not.
Okay. So you think that even if we use the claim number 1, Trump is an authoritarian whose political project seeks to centralize and consolidate power by engaging with our laws in bad
that's
faith,
not fascistic.
in conjunction with my other 2 claims, is not fascistic?
So we'll start with claim 1. That's not fascistic. So claim 2.
Well, you have to be all 3 together.
Okay, go to claim 2.
This is like pointing at a brick and saying, it's not a house, liberal. You said a house has bricks.
Okay, I'm going to go through them one at a time and tell you if they're fascistic or not, and then we'll take the totality of them. Go ahead.
Okay. Trump is an authoritarian whose political project seeks to centralize and consolidate power by engaging with our laws in bad faith. He uses this position of power to vilify, intimidate, and oppress his opposition and those he designates as members of outgroups. And he builds, fuels, and justifies this movement with allusions to a once glorious, now desecrated past, which can only be reattained through ultranationalism.
Well, wait a second. Can only be attained with ultranationalism.
Reattained, yeah.
Reattained. Okay. So Trump is saying that he wants everybody to be the body of the state.
No, he's saying that we have to put America first to re-achieve American glory.
That just sounds like nationalism to me.
Okay, it sounds like ultranationalism when you look at the actual extent to which he employs this propaganda technique, and when you combine it, when you combine it with the fact that it's not in a vacuum, this rhetoric is used to justify authoritarianism.
Well,
even saying it, and then
even if the rhetoric
legally,
is
different question.
Hang on, even if the rhetoric is used to justify authoritarianism, that still is not fascism.
according to you. I
No,
guess.
no, I mean according to all of the according to all of the history around
How
what
long do you want to
fascism
do
is,
this?
and not
Like-
only that, according to your own don't be a snarky little fuck. You took the debate. Suffer. So back to this.
I am.
Yeah, back to this.
It's more funny
The
than
thing
suffering.
is-
I just
the
like.
thing
Are we
is,
not
it's
going to
like,
talk about Trump at all?
we are talking about if Trump's a fascist.
No,
What's
but
the
things
debate?
that Trump has done.
Yeah,
not like,
yeah. I'm not here.
again,
I'm here to talk about if Trump's a fascist.
I want to clarify with James. The debate prompt is not what is fascism. Is Trump a fascist?
Yeah, that's right. So we're talking about if Trump's a fascist. Anything else?
Yeah.
Just to be sure, do I understand right? So if we were using Andrew's definition, in that case, Andrew, you would say, no, Trump's not a fascist.
Yeah. By
Adam,
Andrew's
you would-
definition, I would also say Trump's not a fascist. I wouldn't use his definition.
Okay.
Right. You're
And
just
then-
going to use a made up non-historical definition.
the one that
So
I
you're
think is
using,
better.
using Adam's definition, where would you guys both land?
I would still say he's not a fascist because of the ultranationalism. This is the
No,
this
but-
is the critique.
No. You're not actually using my definition when you say that. You're projecting your own definition of this, like the subparts of the overall definition into my definition. So you keep saying my definition doesn't work because ultranationalism, but in my definition, I've explained what ultranationalism actually means, which is a rhetorical strategy
Yeah, but it doesn't mean
used
that.
to justify power grabs.
That's not what ultranationalism
So
is.
if you were to accept that ultranationalism in this context is a justification or a premise used for power grabs, then would Trump be a fascist?
Ultranationalism is not defined by rhetoric. It's defined by action.
Okay.
Action. And by the way, Gentile points this out. Where his whole philosophy was called pure act. Pure
Okay.
act was his entire philosophy and fascist philosophy. Pure act. It's an action,
I
not
understand.
a rhetoric. It's not a rhetoric. That's
Okay, I
just
just want
made
to
up
ask
bullshit.
the question. I just want to ask the question again. If you were to accept the way I am using the word ultranationalist
I don't
in
accept
this
it.
context, if you were to, it's called a hypothetical, would Trump then be a
I
fascist?
can't. Listen. Hypotheticals.
Can't?
Hypotheticals have to map on to logic, right?
No, I'm just asking if you were to accept the premise,
Yeah.
then would it follow that
So
Trump's a fascist?
if it was the case that I decided to accept the premise is Trump that you say Trump is a fascist, would that make him one? Yes.
Oh, awesome. Cool.
So if you claimed Trump is a fascist and I said yes he is, you're right.
Again, James, thanks for having us. I'm glad
What have
were
we
able to
established there?
figure this out. I don't really know what we established, but you just conceded, I guess. at
What
least
are you
in
talking
using my
about?
definition.
If I listen,
You're saying
you
using
asked
my
if
definition,
it was
Trump
the
is a
case
fascist.
that you accepted this, would it be the case that you accepted it? Yes.
Mhm.
If it were the case that I accepted it, then it would indeed be the case that I accepted it. Good
No,
thing I don't
because-
accept it.
Well, no, you could then
What are you
say that
talking
even
about?
if I accepted your definition of ultranationalism in this context, your definition still would not qualify to Trump as a fascist because Trump did
no.
XYZ
You
or
asked
didn't
me
do XYZ.
if it's the case that you accepted this thing, would it be the case that you accepted this thing?
No.
Yes.
I said if it's the case that you accept my definition of one part
No,
of this
accept
thing,
it.
I can be even more clear.
That's
I
not
said
what
if
you said.
I can clarify what I said. People can also rewind. I said if you were to accept the way I am using the term ultranationalism, then yes.
Yes. If
if
I were
what?
to, so now we're in
If
hypothetical
you were to
territory.
accept what?
If I were to accept your framework for this, in this
No,
case,
not this
ultranationalism.
framework for this. Specifically, my definition of ultranationalism in this context.
Yes.
If you were to accept
If
that,
I were to,
then zooming out,
Uh-huh.
would my overall definition and my
Uh-huh.
affirmative claims of fascism apply to Trump?
I see. So
Yeah.
let me show you how stupid this is.
Please.
If you accepted that this lighter was fascist, would this lighter be fascist?
It's not analogous to what I said.
Answer
at all.
my question. If you
Yes.
accept, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, great. Look.
Not
we-
analogous.
well, you just admitted the lighter's fascist.
Oh my God. No, yeah, this is not analogous.
It's the
Because
same thing
I'm
you're
referring
asking
to
me.
a.
It's the
I'm
same thing
referring
you're
to
asking
a.
me, bro.
I'm referring to a subcomponent of my overall definition, which you are taking issue with, and saying if you were to accept the definition of that subcomponent and then zoom out, would my overall affirmative claims then justify calling Trump a fascist?
Yeah. So what you're asking me is, if it were the case that you agreed with me, Trump was a fascist, would he be?
No.
Yes.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes.
Because you could say, okay, even if you say that, Trump didn't actually do this authoritarian thing, or he doesn't engage in bad faith. He's trying to pursue novel legal theories. He takes legal advice from his lawyers. You could actually dispute on that basis that even if I accept your definition, Trump does not fit this category.
No. Me saying to you, even if it was the case that I accepted what you meant by ultranationalism is true, and therefore agreed with your position, would I be agreeing with your position? Yes, of course, hypothetically, that would be the case.
I'm
What's
asking if
actually
you agree with
happening
my
here,
definition
though,
would Trump meet
I
it.
don't agree with your definition that Trump meets the criteria for ultranationalism for the 15th time. All you've done is ask me hypothetically if you did, would he? And the answer is yes,
I feel
of course.
like you know what I'm saying.
I don't know what you're
and you're
saying.
pretending not to.
I don't, because it makes no sense.
I'm asking if you were to accept the premise, which is how we define fascism, then would you accept the conclusion that Trump meets that definition?
Yeah, you're asking me the same thing. You're just saying if it's the case that you accepted this, would you be accepting this?
No, but I'm not asking you to accept that Trump's a fascist. I'm asking you to accept my definition of what fascism is.
I don't
and then asking if that
accept your
applies to Trump.
definition of fascism for the last time, for the 300th time.
You don't. Dude,
But
you
if
know
you
what
say,
I'm saying.
but
you
if
know
you
what I'm
say,
saying. Don't
I
do
don't
this.
know what you're saying.
Yeah, you do.
I actually don't. Use small words. Pretend I'm really stupid.
Okay. Do you understand that when we are applying labels to people, whether or not that label applies to the person is not just a question of how you define the label, but once you've established that definition, whether or not the person actually fits in line with the description of that label.
Yes.
So you could say, I accept your definition, Adam, but Trump does not meet those affirmative claims that you've made because Trump actually, for example, legitimately thinks that he has the right to do these things. His lawyers tell him he has the right to do it. He legitimately thinks that James Comey and Letitia James are enemies of the state. And therefore, he's not engaging in bad faith. He's not punishing his
So
opponents.
I understand exactly what you're
governing
saying.
differently.
I just need you to
Okay.
understand that it's a complete tautology. What you're asking me to do is grant this so that we can move to something else. Okay, I get
No.
that. Well, you are. What you're saying is, can you accept that my definition within its framework is coherent if you accept my definition as being coherent?
Just saying, if you accept my definition, would Trump meet it? I don't know why you're overcomplicating.
Yeah, if I accepted, yes, but it's tautological, of course. If I accept your definition of fascism, would the guy you're calling a fascist meet the definition that you've tailored to the guy? Sure.
No, but if I gave the same
but so
definition
what?
of fascism and said, like, is Obama a fascist? You would say, no, by your own definition, Obama does not meet that criteria.
And I'm telling
right?
you that here right now with ultranationalism.
No, but then you're using your definition of ultranationalism,
Yeah, because
not
what's
mine.
going on here is this. Okay, do you understand that if I said fascism is the belief that we should be moving towards a stateless society, right? And you're a communist, let's say, right? Would you accept that as the definition of fascism?
I wouldn't, but you're saying if I did,
You
then
wouldn't.
what's,
And but if you did, then you would be agreeing with me, right? If you did.
not necessarily.
Hang on, no. If you accepted that as my definition, then you
Give me
would
the definition again.
Yeah, that communism is a movement towards a stateless, or fascism is a movement towards a stateless society.
But then who'd you be applying that definition to? Just
Well,
give me an example.
Let's just say in this case, Bernie Sanders.
Okay, and then I could say, Andrew, I accept your definition hypothetically, but even by accepting that definition, Bernie Sanders is not moving towards a classless society, therefore he's not a fascist, right?
Okay.
So I could take your premise and entertain it temporarily and see if within that framework, Bernie Sanders would or would not meet it. And
So-
you're not doing that with me.
So if I tailor fascism is just men who have brown beards,
Mhm.
they're all fascists. That's my definition. Can you
Mhm.
tell me how you don't meet the criteria of being a fascist now?
I feel like my beard is more black, but I get your
Black.
point. Yeah, I would say sure.
You would say sure. So okay.
Yeah, but that's not analogous to what I'm
But
saying.
hang on. So it does apply. My definition's coherent and does apply to you being a fascist because you have a black beard, right?
If that's how we're defining it.
Right. So what all you're saying there, do you understand how this becomes tautological? A fascist is you because you are a fascist. You have a black beard, therefore you're a fascist. Andrew,
If
I
you
accept.
said
Hang on,
fascism
Andrew,
is
I
when
accept.
someone has a black beard, and then you asked, is Santa Claus a fascist by that definition? I would say no.
Okay, well then here, let's just do it this way then, right? Anybody who's from Africa is a fascist by my definition. That's what a fascist is. Do you agree?
Cool. I don't agree, but
Anybody who has
Let's
ancestry
entertain
from
it.
Africa, do you accept
Uh-huh.
that as my definition of fascism?
I don't. But if I was to internally just say, okay, let's accept it as a premise for
Okay.
the sake of argument, then who are you calling a fascist by that?
Does Barack Obama now fit the criteria for fascism by my
You said
definition?
anyone who's descended from Africa? By that definition, every human being on Earth would.
Okay, but you have to have like, I don't know, 30% DNA or something.
Okay, I don't know Obama's exact racial makeup. I'd assume, sure, yeah.
Yeah, so then what have we established there though? Would you
That by
agree with me
your-
that that's what fascism was? Or would you
No.
reject that definition?
I'd reject that
And
definition.
what would you
as you've been rejecting mine.
And so you would reject that definition under the premise that, hey, wait a second, that's not what it is. Here's what it actually is, which is what I'm doing to you.